3 days of searching turned up nothing but blackened skeletons. No familiar villages. Shenzi and Ezric marched from one molten crater to the next, watching their homeworld of Chimatra being reduced to the least hospitable state yet. Inferno, the red star that blighted the planet, shone through the mid-morning smog. It was already 104 degrees. Plant animals had withered to husks. Nothing had been spared. Nothing at all. Ezric climbed on the back of his mutant insectoid donkey and loaded his gun in hand. The open desert lay ahead of them both. Inferno's deadly sun rays baked on top of their heads. The relics brayed and hissed. Shenzi hated crossing the open desert, but that was all she could do. She leaned into her saddle and tried to forget her own imagination, which kept insisting that something was watching her, in the waves of the heat rippling around them like curtains of cellophane. The noises smeared into a deep and warbling howl, unlike anything made by machine or animal. Ezric jumped in his saddle. His relic tried to run from it, but Ezric yanked on the reins. Shenzi's skin crawled under her fur as her ears were assaulted by a bizarre, distorted noise emanating from the land ahead of them. Just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. He flinched, like it was all around them both, like a very large physical presence they couldn't see was climbing the hill with them. This invisible, lumbering, towering mass wobbled from side to side. It stopped. Shenzi froze where she stood, too afraid to even breathe. She waited for something to happen, and was blasted by periodic bursts of hot, dry, acrid air. She and Ezric looked around, seeing an empty hillside, an empty wasteland spread underneath them, with the sun boiling overhead. Its joints creaked as it leaned down, and the popping, squeaking noise encircled them from above. It was big, like an invisible hand grasping the hilltop as it leaned down to observe the 3 tiny creatures underneath it. She still couldn't see anything. Ezric held the musket over his shoulder and waited. The memory of the sound sat in Shenzi's mind. The longer she waited, the more it festered. The sensation traveled down her spine, which began to quake. The other ranger noticed something. Ezric turned. A Sarok peeked from around the stone to see what was going on. He looked at her like she was going crazy. Shenzi started to back away, slowly. Meanwhile, Ezric snuck around from the other side of the rock. And just like that, Ezric was dead. Pieces of his body slovened off and fell in the dirt. The Sarok then sprang from out of cover and jumped in front of the creature and fought the invisible entity. But by now, Shenzi had stopped caring. Her body went numb, and the world sank deeper and deeper into a tunnel of her own vision and faded. The last thing she saw was Ezric's grip around his gun slacken. Shenzi entered a world of darkness. Without sensation. Not even time. Shenzi climbed the ridge overlooking the gorge, neither of which had names. The gorge was bisected by the stream, a small trickle of lead-saturated water that the village used to feed their crops. Just one of the tributaries that fed into the Icton River. The ridge was the usual grayish-brown rock that composed most of Katash, littered with empty beer bottles and stubbed-out cigars. Shenzi gazed out into the valley she lived in, a brownish-gray bowl in the land. At the bottom of the bowl, like grains of malted cereal, a cluster of shipping containers and straw huts huddled together for safety. As they approached, eyes staring from the clumps of dead leaves were unreadable. More scared villagers filtered out from the huts, armed with pitchforks and sickles. Boss looked over his shoulder. His people were milling around, keeping a safe distance between themselves and the foreigner. It had been days since the massacre began. He said, "Everyone's too afraid to leave their homes, and I'm tired of these cantankerous field workers picking fights with each other." "How's Keska?" Shenzi asked. She meant the village's resident shaman, Keska Bonecrusher. "She's making art, Shenzi. Everyone is holed up inside their miserable little homes, afraid that they're going to be the next one killed at random, and there's rumors that this thing, whatever it is, was made in a lab in Amrata. Well, you know how Ezric and I were looking for whatever was destroying the villages? Yeah, Bosk asked, now noticing Ezrik wasn't there. I think we found it. This is the guy who killed it, pointing at the Sauroch. I'm sure Keska already knows what to do with him, she said. Sure, fine, go ahead and make sure she's decent. Chief? Shenzi asked. What about Ezrik? One thing at a time, okay, he said. Shenzi peeked inside Keska's hut. Her home consisted of a single room with walls made of interwoven reeds. She had a dirt floor, which was littered with her tools of the trade, like long sticks she used as dowsing rods, or interesting junk she collected, empty bottles, or weirdly shaped rocks. At that exact moment, the only other Knoll living in southwest Katash entered through the bead curtain. She wore Bosk's great-granddaughter's skull on her head as a mask. You look like a necromancer, Shenzi said to her. Keska pointed to the Sauroch. You! I saw you in a dream last night. Oh boy, Shenzi said. I saw the future. Not the definitive, actual future, because there is no such thing. Nor is there a past. All energetic potential lies in the quanta of gravity, Keska said. Should I be writing this down? The ranger asked. No. Wait, yes, here. Keska handed Shenzi her own spellbook and a pen. He showed me 2 great cities, locked in war with each other. One was built alongside a deep and mighty river, and had terraced gardens and decadent banquet halls. Everyone got around on monorails. And Shenzi, the other was built on the intersection of 2 transnational highways. It is a place of smog and automobile traffic. Humans live here. They reincarnated the Chamatrans. That's preposterous, Shenzi cried. Shenzi looked down at her notes inside the spellbook. Compared to Keska's neat little handwriting, Shenzi's own handwriting was disappointingly crooked and took up more space on the page. I've ruined it, she said. No, Shenzi. You're just learning. I know things are kooky in this modern bioengineered world of ours. But you know what? This is still Chamatra at the end of the day, and what really runs the show around here is magic. And magic is all about learning and making mistakes. Is that really all there is to say about it? Shenzi finally asked. Yes. That's the great thing about it, Keska said. Just to be clear, she said afterwards, this does concern the fate of the whole planet. Of course it does, Shenzi said. Possibly even the universe? Sure.